Alright friends, welcome back to Tactical Enlightenment's ongoing series covering the different combat units in Bannerlord. In this episode today we will continue to cover cavalry. In particular, we will cover defensive uses for cavalry, a highly underused and underrated way to use these armored horsemen. We'll cover 4 different ways you can use cavalry defensively in this episode and give overhead examples in each. Alright, so in this first example of how to use cavalry, we're going to have a little bit of an unusual battle here. I actually have a custom battle. It's Empire against Empire, and the cav is the same. Both divisions have 25 cav, and as you can see, they have equivalent value archers and infantry. In other words, only the tier 4 and tier 5 units for both sides. Now look at the difference. One side has 50 archers, 50% archers, and we have 50% infantry. Now the difference is we're going to use shock troops, and we're going to use our cavalry in a defensive manner here. This is basically going to be using cavalry to defend against enemy archers and pound them in a tactic I like to call shield and shock. Of course, the shields are those heavy cav moving up in divisions, and the shock is obviously the shock troops, right? So we're going to have 2 different infantry divisions. You really don't have to have 2. We're going to do this to flank the enemy. This would still be fairly efficient even with 1. The archer division is sort of irrelevant. We're just going to be putting them at the back to shoot. But what we're going to do is we're going to have 3 different cav divisions here. You can see the 2nd, 3rd, and the 8th. And what we're going to use those divisions with our infantry is basically lead walls of shields. As we approach the enemy, we're going to come in shield wall. Now you see our infantry here. I beg your pardon on the infantry too. I have no shield infantry. So you got to protect these shock troops to get them into battle, right? And how we're going to protect them is with this cavalry. Now we have a massive amount of these shock troops, but they have to close, right? These Manavliatons, these guys are deadly, but they're highly vulnerable to archers. Well, in this instance, the enemy has the same amount of cavalry as us, and they're going to be using their cav to charge the traditional way that a lot of people use their cav. We're not, though. We're going to use our cav. Basically, you can think of them as like offensive linemen in an NFL football game, right? American football. We're going to be bringing these cav. I'm going to use the RTS camera too, by the way, so this is easy to see. We're going to be bringing this cav up effectively just in big bodyguard lines with this infantry division behind them, right? Basically, the 5th the 6th is our shock line, 100, and you can see it's like 130 infantry. We're going to bring those guys forward and basically try to flank the enemy with multiple lines of shock troops. Now, the enemy has shock troops of their own, right? They're not devoid of shock, but they're just approaching this with a different tactic than we are. We are not going to be using our cav to charge the enemy, at least not till the battle, at least not till our shock troops are right up on the enemy. But what we're going to be using them for is protection. The enemy archers want to shoot these shock troops, right? These guys are vulnerable. They don't have a shield. We have no infantry, in fact, with the shield, right? So we're going to be using this cav, though, because the cavalry is basically one of the best things in Bannerlord to stop archer attacks, right? It blocks arrows very, very well. Of course, a lot of the arrows hit the horse. It hits the guy's shield. It hits the ground. And behind them, we're going to have these shock troops protected by those, by that cav, right? It's not a complex idea, but I just don't find many people approaching the game from this manner, right? They're using cav in traditional manners, which is to charge, right? You see the enemy cav, they're on both wings, and undoubtedly they're going to charge. We're not. We're just going to use these guys to do exactly what they're doing, right? They're getting shot, their shields are taking arrows, but that just means that our shock troops can move up largely unmolested. Now, shock troops in the game are basically the most deadly units if you can get them close, right? I talked about this in the infantry episode. Shock troops' major weakness is to enemy heavy cav, and they're going to take some losses down there, but their main weakness is to enemy archers. Now, skirmishers can be a problem too, but the enemy doesn't have any skirmishers here. So you can see what we're doing. We're just stretching our cav around this enemy force, right? We're effectively enveloping them. And what I'm actually doing is sending one of our cav divisions behind the enemy. You can see our guys here getting kind of charged by cav, but that's okay. They're tough infantrymen. They can handle some charges by the enemy. And now it's time to wrap this enemy force up, right? Now, unfortunately, they weren't smart enough to spread their archers out, and so they're completely surrounded. Their 250 archers is now about to face very angry guys with huge fucking wicked Manavliatons, right? These guys get sent in. The cav is sort of intermingled here, but it's basically just a surround and destroy situation to the enemy here. Again, very basic, but you cannot get into this favorable position until you get close to the enemy. Now we're taking some losses here, right? The enemy archers actually aren't completely feeble. You got like the sergeant crossbowman. He can actually do some decent damage, but he's not going to have a good time against that many Manavliatons, right? It's a huge wall of Manavliatons on both sides of the enemy here, and eventually those guys are going to win the day. Now, if my army had 50% archers, you know, if we basically reversed it, and by the way, look at our archers here, are just completely unaffected, right? We can move them up. Even if this battle's kind of close in the center here, our archers are going to mop up. But if the results were going the other way and I had 50% archers, we would be able to destroy the enemy. It would be overwhelming. Why? Because we would have multiple archer divisions. We would be flanking. We would be doing all kinds of dynamic things here. We wouldn't just be compacting all our units into a big ball that says, kill me. Enemy's actually putting up a little better fight than I expected, but this battle's still going to go our way, right? You see these guys here? I probably should have had them closer and told them to charge, because a lot of the crossbowmen are out of ammo. But we'll send them up into battle here just to sort of finish them off. But I don't actually think we needed to do that. I think they're not even going to reach the battle. This battle is over. There's a handful of the enemy still shooting. But ultimately, this is a victorious situation here. In fact, they're routing. So shield and shock. There are other examples, and we'll have other examples in this series. Not this episode, but in this series of using it. It's extremely effective, and it's a great example of using Cav in an unorthodox way in a defensive manner. You can see we still ended up with 150 surviving troops. So this is a substantial victory here. Their archers run off into the sunset. And that's that. All right, so we actually are going to try this that different way I was talking about. This time we will have more archers here, right? The enemy, you can see, has 25% archers and 50% infantry, and now we're the opposite. We have 25% infantry and 50% archers, so the shoe's on the other foot. Everything else is identical. We both have the same strength cav. And again, we're slightly outnumbered here, but it's more or less the same. Now, this episode is not so much shield and shock. This one is basically going to be shield and shoot, I guess would be a good name for it. We are going to use our cav lines here to protect our archers, right? We are going to flank the enemy as they come in with archers. It's almost a modified kill box, and we are going to protect those archers with cav, right? Instead of using our cav offensively, again, this whole episode is designed to basically describe ways to use your cav in an unorthodox defensive way. And you see our first division here. It's a mix of Manavliatons and Legionnaires. They're just going to hold the center. Now, if you notice my 4th division here, I've selected shields. If you can see down here on the little box in the lower left. And that's because I want this 4th division to be a protectable unit. These guys are going to be crossbowmen mostly, and they're going to have shields. The reason I'm doing this is because I want these guys to be able to have 2 different actions besides shooting the enemy. They can square like this and protect themselves, and they can also shield wall and attack the enemy, right? I can spread them out and then send them in a shield wall to treat them almost like infantry. Meanwhile, our regular archers are going to be in a different division because they're not going to have that function, right? Our 5th division will be archers without shields, and our 4th crossbow. This is a very distinctive thing that I think everybody should be doing once you're getting experience with tactics. All right, so the 2 cav wings are heading out, and the reason we're doing that is because I want to be able to bring the infantry, the enemy infantry, they got 250 infantry, into the center of battle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to flank them with these archers. Now, to combat that, right, the enemy is going to try to charge them with their cav divisions, and we're simply going to basically hold them off, right? We're going to stiff arm them like an NFL running back, pushing back the linebacker with his arm. That 44 guys over there and that 80 over here, those guys are going to protect our archers as the enemy comes in. Now, why is there more on this side? That's because these are the delicate troops. These are the guys without shields. I told you before, the 4th division is crossbowmen. All those guys have shields. So on the left flank here, if we're getting charged hard, I will simply put those guys into a square or a shield wall. Hence, I don't need as much protection. So our line of protection goes up, and it basically, it doesn't completely stop, but it highly negates the enemy charging through there. Now you see the enemy divisions coming at us, so we're going to move our infantry back. It's 250 infantry. They far outnumber us. And now we're going to start to position these units in a way that, these archer units in a way that it's shooting in the back or the sides of the enemy. Kind of moving my cav in here. Now I'm actually telling my cav to attack their cav just to kind of keep them occupied. We're going to keep moving our infantry back. Right there, infantry ball is kind of chasing after them haplessly. And we start to angle our archers out towards the enemy. And again, you see me using my cav line here to protect against the enemy archers. I don't want the enemy shooting our archers with, with their archers. I want to protect our archers from their archers. So our line gets pushed back even further. The enemy's haplessly chasing them. You can see they're not even close to getting to us. And now they have archers behind the enemy. The enemy is really fucked here. We just suffered a big wave of losses, but that's fine. I know this strategy is going to work. I don't even have to see the end result. There's no spoilers in this episode here. This is not part of our campaign. I assure you this tactic is going to work. And that's because the enemy now is getting surrounded. They are getting shot on multiple sides. You see they're starting to pursue these archers over here. Well, we're not going to let them, right? We're not going to let them get even close. So we'll move the other archers, the other crossbowmen even closer so they're shooting them at closer range. This is basically a dance we're playing, and we know the steps better than the enemy. Now their shields are up, they're blocking some of the arrows, but they are going to get greatly weakened by this attack. I'm actually going to send this cav division to attack their archers. Alright, so these guys get put into a thick, tight wall here. And that's because I want the enemy attacking them with their troops. It's basically a square for distractionary purposes. As I move our archers up, and we're going to be shooting these guys in the back, right? As the enemy is distracted here, attacking our square, they're being pounded by crossbowmen. And then on the other side, of course, they're being shot to pieces by archers, right? And they're not going to do a lot of damage to these guys in the square. You can see the death spam has started to turn in our favor. They're still doing a pretty good job here with their heavy cav, just sort of attacking our guys. But their infantry, or their archers, are scrambling right now. Their archers are in a similar position. They don't have protection. They're being attacked. We can now charge with our crossbowmen, right? Our crossbowmen are close enough. Some of those guys are out of ammo. It makes sense to turn those guys into offensive units. Any crossbowmen that are out of ammo, right? Any archer that's out of ammo becomes an infantryman. Now, you don't want to use them as infantrymen until they run out of ammo. Now their units are sort of stretching out, so we're going to charge and shield wall, and we've told our crossbowmen here to charge. Now, they're coming up to the battle like they ate too many fucking Twix last night. But the enemy's now in a bad way. They're being shot from multiple sides. They're being charged by our infantry. They're being shot over here by archers, and the death spam has turned decidedly green. I mean, it's almost all green right now. It's a massacre. So the basic premise, again, of this episode, as we watch kind of their archers getting pummeled, the basic premise here is relatively simple. You want to be able to flank the enemy vanguard as they come in to attack you, but you need to protect your archers. So again, we're going to use our cav in a different way. We're going to use our cav defensively and protect our archers so that they can flank, right? If you want to flank, the enemy's going to attack you with their cav. You can simply counter them with your own cav. Once you flank the enemy like this, you get those kind of results, right? The enemy is fleeing, and look at this blowout, right? We have 270 troops still left, right? That is a crushing, decisive victory. And again, we have the same strength as the enemy. In fact, we had like 4 or 5 less troops. So here's another perfect example how you can use your cav in an unorthodox defensive way. Everybody out there just wants to charge with their cav. You don't have to, right? You do not have to charge with your cav to win battles in Bannerlord. And here's another good example of it. All right, so now we'll have another battle very similarly, but we will play as the Aserai. We are going to continue to show the power of cav, and in this case, both sides have 3 of their noble line, right? We both have the top 3 units, and then similarly, we have the highest strength 2 infantry divisions, right? Both sides have effectively the same strength army. Now, one thing we're going to do differently in this battle is we're going to give the enemy a 10% advantage in numbers. Now, Aserai, of course, their cav is different than normal cav, right? They throw javelins, but they're still very effective at shield wall tactics in a battle like this, right? The enemy's going to outnumber us. They're going to have more infantry. And just like the first battle, we are going to flank with our archers. And then we are basically going to protect those archers with cav divisions before we bring them in for like a modified kill box to destroy the enemy here. A kill box is a pretty advanced tactic, but I'm hoping these overhead views where you can see everything and kind of take it all in, I'm hoping these will really help people to sort of understand the concepts of it. So we're going to have 3 cav divisions here, and I'm actually going to assign my 8th to be my best. This is going to be kind of the vanguard cav. And then you can see these 2 other divisions, we want them to be about the same size, a little heavier on the 2nd cav, and we'll be using them again in a more defensive manner. There will be times where we charge with cav in a battle like this, but at the beginning of the fight, it's purely defensive. Again, just like the previous battle, we will use the RTS mod so that you can see this laid out beautifully in front of you. I expect this to be a quick battle. The enemy outnumbers us, and so undoubtedly they're going to charge us very aggressively, and that's exactly what we want. We're going to use their aggression against them. We've got 73 cav on the left flank, and then we've got these 40 and 46 on the right flank. I'm putting both cav divisions over here. That's because if the enemy's not charging over there, I actually want to be able to use those cav divisions to harass the enemy archers, right? We've got javelin throwers. Basically, I want those guys to be multi-purpose. It's just like chess. Sometimes you're using pieces to defend. Sometimes you're using them to attack. The best chess players are using their pieces to attack and defend at the same time. All right, so we're kind of chasing off their troops here. They don't have a lot of horse archers. They have 25 horse archers. And we do have a horse archer division, but it's really going to be inconsequential in a battle like this. All right, so again, on the right flank, the cav is moving out. The archers then get positioned behind him for protection. And you can see the enemy's archers over there, right? We want to protect our archers from their cav and from the enemy archers. Meanwhile, our line here, our main line is in the middle, and we're hoping that draws the attention of that huge vanguard. They outnumber us by 60 men, and they have a cav division behind it. Now, a lot of times they'll do that. It'll be an elite cav division because they sort of attack them together, a little bit like how Napoleon would use his guard in battle. Look at this. And these guys get stopped by 2 waves of cav. How many guys got through to our archers? What, 3 guys? Right? Out of all of those cavalry that charged us, almost none of them got through. Now these archers over here are almost completely free, shooting the enemy on the side. Again, the enemy infantry gets pulled back. And just like the previous battle, we're going to stretch these archers in sort of lines so that they're behind the enemy. They're kind of angled behind the enemy. The reason we're doing that, obviously, is we want to shoot these guys in the back. Right? We have no morals. We have no ethics about shooting them in the back. We're all about cowardice here. Now, our main infantry division here is just in a shield wall. We can have them attack or we can have them charge or stand their ground. It doesn't really matter. The guys that are killing here are these archers off behind the enemy. The enemy's all compacted now on our infantry, but they're being pounded by our arrows. Now, to cinch everything off, we're bringing in our cav divisions here to attack the enemy from behind. I'm bringing in the 2nd. That's heavy cav on the left flank, and the 3rd is almost dissolved, but the 8th cav, that's elite cav on the right, and it's hammer and anvil tactics to combine with the archers. So now the enemy is stacked up here, and we do what's called a hammer and anvil, which is a charge of cav behind the enemy. So just like I was talking about earlier with chess, we used initially, as the enemy gets obliterated here, we used our cav to defend, and then 30 seconds later, we charged with our cav and obliterated the enemy vanguard. On the sides, still our archers are being harassed. It's kind of messy, but there's definitely positive death spam overall. Now, the enemy had a huge vanguard, so it's going to take a little while for our troops to wear them out here, right? We charged them with cav, we charged them with our infantry division, and we weakened them with our archers. But ultimately, any of the guys that survive this, they're going to get shot. You see the archer divisions on both sides are largely intact. 74 on one side, 68 on the other, right? These guys are still doing major damage, and now we can start to apply these archers towards the destruction of the enemy archers, right? At this stage, I'm confident the enemy vanguard is going to dissolve, and we can start moving these archers up for the next phase. Now, what are we going to do with those archers, right? As we move them closer to the enemy, we are going to protect them with cav. In fact, I'm pulling our cav out of this infantry scrum back here because our infantry is going to win that battle. I don't need to leave them back there and waste their energy. We're going to bring our cav forward, and again, just like we were doing before to protect them, Now we're moving our cav up against the enemy archers as a shield wall, right? We're pushing in against the enemy. They're trying to shoot at us, and they're going to find a lot of their arrows hit our cavalry, right? We're basically, this is different than shield and shock. This is shield and shot, right? We're moving up our archers behind our cav divisions, and we're just going to slowly close the vise on the enemy. Now, once these cav divisions are close to the enemy archers, they can charge, right? We don't need just to have them stand there getting shot. Once they're close and our archers have kind of gotten within range, these archers are now both shooting. Actually, I'm telling them to charge here just in case anybody's out of arrows, they can charge. But our cav division now becomes another thing that's attacking these archers. They're being attacked by two different cav divisions, horse archers, and they're being shot by other archers. Even though we're outnumbered in this battle, the enemy is absolutely fucked at this stage, right? Their archers are trucked, ran over, shot to pieces. These archers on our side are completely free and clear. There's nothing even attacking them, and this battle is over. See, these pathetic archers they're like trying to hold on here, but with cav charging through them and being shot to pieces, these guys over here are getting shot. It's a very bad situation for the enemy. Now, all of this was possible because we destroyed their vanguard with that combination flanking attack and hammer and anvil. So hammer and anvil obviously falls more under the offensive cav, but I guess the point of this in this episode is that you don't have to do one way or the other, right? As we watch our infantry here destroy their archers. Some of our infantry actually survived as well. So all of our units basically got into that pummeling at the end. The point, though, is that you can use your cav defensively and then 30 seconds later attack with them. Just make sure that you're considering their defensive value. So many Bannerlord players don't use cav as defensive units, but they're really missing out. All right, so our last example we're going to do is another tactic that I've been developing that I gave a cool name called the Inner Circle of Hell. And it's most effective against the Khazate, so that's up next. All right, we'll spare you all the setup here for this. We have now Khazate against Aserai, and you can see it's sort of a traditional Khazate army, right? They have the top 2 tier horse archers, the top 2 heavy cav, and then less infantry and archers, and we have kind of a mixed army here of Aserai. We've got a few horse archers, very few. We've got the same amount of noble cav as the enemy has, right? That way it's fair, but we're giving the enemy almost 50 more troops. So we're outnumbered, and we're going to basically deal with these horse archers in a new and dynamic way. Now, horse archers, the biggest problem, of course, is they circle you. Now, I don't want to position at the back of the map. It would be just kind of like cheese. That's the easiest way to fight Khazate. I'm going to actually fight in the open here and show you that this tactic can work even if you're in the open. Now, the first thing I'm doing is I'm separating my infantry division. So I'm going to zoom in here. You can see the 1st and 6th are different. The 1st, those guys all have shields and javelins, and the 6th is shock troops. I'm doing that because I'm going to use that 1st to protect the 6th. Now, if you wanted to use one division and just use a shield wall, the AI does a decent job of putting the 6th behind them. This is my preference, though. I prefer the micromanage. Okay, so the 4th and 5th, these will both be archer divisions, and they are going to be within our circle of hell. Now, it's not a circle of hell for us. It's a circle of hell for the enemy. What we're going to do is make one huge cav division. You see the 2nd division is in a huge division, and we're going to make a giant circle with these cav. Right? Now, I'm making sure that the shape of the battlefield is correct. You don't want to be over a hill where you can't actually shoot at the enemy. This little plateau here is perfect. So watch what we're going to do here with this cav. Now, this is what the enemy does. The enemy, when they do this circle defense, they make it super tight like this, and they put their archers in there like that. That's worthless because these guys can't shoot. Furthermore, the enemy just shoots you full of arrows. Or you can shoot the enemy if they're dumb enough to do that. Similarly, you don't want to do this because this is not enough protection, and it's too big of an area inside. What I prefer is 2 horses deep, so you can kind of tinker and pull this little circle until you get it so that the very back of it has 2 solid little green dots like that. Now, I'm using the RTS mod. I would recommend this just for the ease of use, but you can set this up even with vanilla Bannerlord. All right, so that's the circle. That's the inner circle of hell, and I just separated my units here so you can see things a little more clearly. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put infantry towards the front and archers towards the back. So I have these archers. We'll put the third cav, by the way. This little third cav, this is a supportive cav layer. And what I mean by that is you can think of this as like arming the battleship further. Look at how jammed up it is over there. And the reason is because the enemy horse archers are going to be shooting us there. Now towards the front here, our cav is 3 deep. I'm a little concerned that's going to make this ring too tight, and I may adjust it more. All right, so the first infantry goes right at the front, right? And I want them to be absorbing the heavy cav charge that the enemy is undoubtedly going to bring. Right behind them, of course, the 6th infantry, right? Those are the shock troops. We're protecting those guys. If you zoom in and look, there's now a wave of, or a line of cav and infantry protecting those guys. Meanwhile, towards the back here, we put the archers. But this is critical, this positioning. And this is the pre-battle. You have all the time in the world. Look at these archers standing next to each other like they're dance partners. That's no good, right? So what we're going to do is we need to enlarge our circle a little bit. And also, this is bad too, because if they're at the back here, they're not going to be able to shoot. So we need to enlarge our circle a little bit to accommodate the space for these archers. If they don't have enough space, they won't shoot. That's just the nature of it. Over here, we're going to put our horse archers. They can be in shield wall, but with so few of them, they're not going to be a major impact on this battle. These guys that are kind of tucked in here too tight, we're going to give them just a little bit more room. Now you can see the archers all have space. There's no horses in their face. They're going to have enough space to pull this tactic off. But what I really want is the enemy to enter the circle here. They're going to eventually be attacking us and entering the circle, and we're going to maul them with that 1st Infantry Division and the 6th. Now the 6th, here we'll use RTS again. The 6th is those shock troops. Those are going to be the linchpin of this battle, right? Those are going to be the guys that really obliterate them. Now look how many heavy horse archers they have, right? This is a problem. But our circle defense here, that means there's a lot of shields protecting us from these arrows. So we're protecting ourselves first from the horse archers. Next is going to be protection from their main heavy cav charge. So the other thing we want to protect too is this shock troops in here. As these arrows come raining in, these guys that are a little away from shields are vulnerable. So I have no problem with you putting them very tightly behind the other infantry, right? Just like this. That's what the AI would do if you put them in one big block. And now they have a guy with a shield, or sometimes 2 guys with a shield in front of them protecting them. Now you can see our javelin throwers are doing their thing. Here comes their heavy cav. It's basically 2 major threats at the same time, right? We're getting rained on with archers here, and this is what makes Khazate dangerous. Now, if you notice, I've got this 2nd layer of cav in there helping us block arrows, right? Like, that's critical. And now we're going to use that cav division multi-purpose. That 3rd division, we were using them as a shield wall there. Now we're actually going to use them to help provide another barrier for the enemy to get to our archers. We're going to use that 3rd cav in another shield wall line here. So it's the outer ring. The 1st infantry is next. Here, we'll do the slow-mo. The 3rd is the shock troops, right? They have to get through all those bodies, some of them swinging axes. And now they have this 3rd cav division behind them as well. Out of this 100-something heavy horse, probably 10 or 20 of these guys will actually get through. The slow-mo is a perfect way to do it here using the RTS mod. You can see their speed is already going down, and that's one of the major reasons this works so well. A lot of heavy cav derive their value. They get their damage from moving fast. Well, if they're slowed down significantly and then they poke you with their spear, it doesn't hurt nearly as bad, right? So now that they're in our inner circle of hell, we send in the 3rd and we send in the 6th, right? The shock troops are told to attack and kill these guys, right? These horses that are now stood up or moving slowly, they get to attack. Now, the archers are still shooting, right? They're doing a lot of damage. And, of course, the 1st infantry is attacking as well. So you effectively have 4 different units that are attacking this cav in here, and it's lost its speed, right? You have these shock troops that are wailing away with their giant axes. And the infantry is charging in as well. The enemy infantry, it's kind of a small group, but we welcome them to the inner circle of hell, right? We're ready for them to come on in. The other thing we do too is I'm holding fire on the 6th, because then they put away their little pathetic throwing axe and break out their two-handed murdering executioner axe, right? You want these guys using their better weapon here. You can have your 6th Division, these shock troops, hold fire. So the enemy in this situation, the heavy cav that's in here in the infantry, has absolutely no chance of coming out of this alive, right? All of the guys that enter the circle of hell here, they die. They get torn up by the devil, and they never return, right? They're stood up, they're getting attacked in multiple different directions, and they're kind of stuck in here as well. And obviously they have no archer protection, right? The archers are outside the ring, not helping them at all. Now we'll run this at full speed, and you can just watch the death spam. I mean, what is that, 5, 6 to 1 sometimes? It's a massacre. Now, a lot of the deaths, if you actually can see it up close, are being caused by their horse archers. Their horse archers are still shooting in here. You're going to suffer some losses here, right? Because 8 is pretty tough, and their horse archers, there's just no way to prevent 180 horse archers from shooting you. But this is still a massacre result. Look at it, it's almost all green now as they get butchered. So their heavy cav division is virtually destroyed, and their infantry is virtually destroyed, right? What do they have left? Well, all they have left at this stage is 45 archers and 160 horse archers. So the horse archers become the threat. We're now going to use our divisions here, our heavy, in this case we're actually using our heavy horse archers as a shield wall, and the 3rd cav, again, as additional sort of layers to our fort. And if that seems strange to you, like when you're using horse archers defensively, it's totally viable because they will hold their shield up. They will block arrows. They're the only horse archer in the game that actually has a shield. You can see I'm also kind of moving my infantry around in a little dance. We're also going to attack their archers with our 1st infantry. And why the 1st infantry? And that's because they have a shield, right? These guys can basically pursue them across the map and chase them out of this battle, holding up their shields, right? As soon as I did that, those archers are basically dead. They're out of the battle, or they're going to be killed. Now, you see the back of our ring here is kind of weak. I've got no problem with you micromanaging it and putting some of your units back here. But the other thing we can do, too, is we can confront these cav now. This is the heavy horse archers. This is the last major threat. So what we can do is we can start to have our units follow behind in a shield and shock, right? This is just like the first battle where we use heavy cav to allow us to get closer to the enemy. So the 1st infantry is going to destroy the archers there. Back here, we use this 2nd cav division, right? We've pulled it out of its circle formation, and we're going to make it a big, long shield wall with our shock troops behind them, right? They're protecting the archers, and now the shock troops can get told to kill all these cons guards, right? He just mowed that guy off his horse. But they're vulnerable, right? If these horse archers shoot these guys over and over again, they're gonna get dropped. So we have this shield wall here. We're using our Aserai Ferris here strictly defensively. Now that they're close enough, of course, we send in the shock troops. The archers, of course, are also largely unimpeded, right? They're firing away. Some of these guys are getting killed too, but they're shooting. And so what's happening at this stage is the enemy horse archers are being attacked by 3 different units. Our infantry is charging their archers off the map, so now they're being attacked by shock troops, archers, and our 2nd Corps. Right over here, this is finished. Their archers, in fact, are routing, so we can actually bring that 1st Division back to this fight. Right, just the coup de grace here, just to finish this battle off. Now we can add some spear and shield infantry to this beating. Now, because horse archers are pretty decent in melee, right? They swing their glaive. They're quite capable. But in this instance, they're just simply outgunned. It's kind of chaotic. The archers are still shooting them. I've got my cav is sort of running around skirmishing. But now our infantry is coming back, and this battle is over. I wish I could speed it up here for you. Ultimately, though, we have 150 guys. They have 90. And, of course, we have the right combination of units to really wail on them. You see our two-handed guys are wailing away, swinging with their big roundhouse attacks. Yeah, that guy just got trucked. And they're putting up a valiant fight, but ultimately, attacked by 4 different units, they can't win this. They're getting stood up by the spearmen, and that's the ultimate destruction for them. When they get stood up by a guy with a spear, the next thing they know, they have a 2-handed executioner axe just cutting through their body, and they're dead. So the inner circle of hell in this example, I've actually seen a lot more destructive victories than this example. I've seen it where half of our troops in a custom battle survived. I have a whole episode strictly focused just on this one special tactic, but hopefully this shows you the destructive power of defensive cavalry, right? We're using cavalry to protect our other units. In this case, you see we have 120-something units left in a pretty decisive victory against a tough foe. And don't forget, too, in this battle, we were outnumbered by almost 50 troops. So it's even more decisive than it looks on the surface. Our troops here chase the enemy off the map. All right, well, that concludes this episode on Defensive Cav. We're going to continue this series of focused tactics on each individual unit in Bannerlord. So there's more to come. As you can imagine, Offensive Cav is going to be the topic of one of our next episodes. I appreciate you guys for watching. Please subscribe and like if you're interested in seeing more videos like this. We're definitely going to have more content coming out soon. And I will see you guys next time.